In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to install Visual Studio Code on Windows. It is a really straightforward process. Download, click next a few times, it should be installed. So I'll make the assumption that if you are watching this tutorial, you are new to Visual Studio Code. Therefore, I will show you a few settings that you might want to change when you start Visual Studio Code, as well as show you how to create a new project. So let's get Visual Studio Code installed. First of all, open up your browser, type in Visual Studio Code. Now I've just got the default browser here. You may be using Chrome, but what you're looking for is code.visualstudio.com. So that might take you directly to the download page, or it might take you to the home page. Either way, it is the same page. You can scroll down, there's the download options here, or if you can't find that, select other platforms from this link here, and that will just scroll down for you. So what you're looking for here is to install for Windows. In actual fact, you don't need to necessarily scroll down. If you do have any different preferences, installation preferences, then do have a look at those options there. But in general, you can just click this big blue button and that will download Visual Studio Code. Once you've downloaded Visual Studio Code, select the file, open the file. That will then take you through a short installation process. So I accept the agreement. Next, select where you want to install. Just press next and then next again. And that's pretty much it. So there's no changes that you need to make there. Press install. Everything should now be installed. So once you have finished installing Visual Studio Code, open up Visual Studio Code. You'll be presented with the welcome screen. Visual Studio Code, there are hundreds of different settings. If you go to File and then Preferences and Settings, you're going to find a whole bunch of different settings, and you can drill down using the menu here. Now, in addition to that, you can use the Search Settings option at the top here. So let's change the zoom first. So here I have a mouse with a mouse wheel, and by using the mouse wheel and pressing Control, I can zoom in and out of the text, the code, and that can make it easy for me to navigate around and view certain sections of the code. So that's something that I turn on straight away. In addition to that, zoom also can refer to the zoom level of this window. So the UI is quite small. So I might change that to, for example, 2, press enter, and you can see that the UI has now scaled depending on the number that I've typed in. The final change that we might want to make when working with Python, typically we will have the terminal open. So if I go to Terminal, New Terminal, here you can see that the text is quite small in the terminal. You might want to change that font size. So if I type in terminal font, that should take me to the terminal integrated font size, and I can go ahead and change that font size. So press 18, you can see that's automatically changed the font there of the font size. So that's something else that you might want to change. And then the final option is File and then Auto Save. So I do need to select that. Once I've selected that, if I go back, you can now see there is a tick next to it, indicating that we're now auto saving. So that's going to save automatically any code that we type into any of our files. Right, so that's the initial settings that I recommend. So the terminal can be open and closed using a shortcut. Normally it would tell you the shortcut here in the menu. So Control Shift plus, that's going to, Control Shift and the back tick, that's going to open and close the terminal. Alternatively, you can close the terminal on the right hand side. There's a cross button there, and that's going to close that. Right, so that's the terminal sorted and set up. So let's talk about project. Visual Studio Code, typically we work with projects. Now we want to, when we open Visual Studio Code, open the project we want to work on. Now, a project is normally stored as files inside of a folder. So we need to set up a project folder. So I'm going to set up a new project folder just on my desktop now to show you. So typically when we open up Visual Studio Code, the first thing we do is open up project that we want to work on. So we have a project folder. So you can open the folder directly from the Welcome tab here, or else you can use the navigation bar and File and open a new folder that way. So that's typically how we're going to start a new project, or how we're going to start using Visual Studio Code at any time when we open up Visual Studio Code. So let's open up our folder. Let's go to Desktop, open up the project, and then select that folder. So we now have the project started. We can now start our project, whatever that might be. So let's create a new file here. Let's call this new.py, a new Python module. And then let's go ahead and type in print and then hello. So we're just going to print to the terminal just to check that everything is now working. Of course, in our project folder now, we have a new file. That's what we've just created in Visual Studio Code. So let's open up the terminal. Now I'm using a Mac keyboard here, so I don't have the shortcut. So let's go to the terminal, open up a new terminal, and then wait a couple of seconds. And then let's go ahead and run Python and then new.py. So the output to the terminal is hello, as expected. There we go. Just as a final tip, if you are someone who utilizes multiple machines, you might like to go to File, Preferences, and then your profiles, and then go ahead and, well, first of all, let's take a look at the profile that we just created. So this is the profile we've just created where we changed some of these settings in Visual Studio Code. Now we might want to save that and then use it on other machines. There is a more automated approach whereby we can go to Preferences and then Backup and Sync, and you can log in and back up all of your data across all of your devices. And of course, the other device that you might have or use to code, you can simply just sign in and all the settings then should be copied across. So at this point, we now have successfully installed Python, Visual Studio Code. We've configured some initial settings for Visual Studio Code, and we've created a new project.